I think we probably can go ahead, Liz.
Okay, so welcome to everyone to this webinar about the CIFellows 2021 program. We're going to try to explain to you what the program is and help you understand how to make best use of it for your own research career. And we're going to start with a bit of background and then have some words from Margaret Martinosi and then talk about the nuts and bolts of the program. At any point, next slide, please, Helen. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A, and this slide is a diagram of how to do that. And we will answer these as we go along. We'll also record, of course, the Q&A will be recorded, and we will post the answers on the webpage, the CIFellows webpage. There's already a significant FAQ page there, and we will add to it as these questions come up. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce Margaret Martinosi, who is her research interest. This is the most important thing, of course. She's a computer architect. She's particularly interested in mobile computing, and because of mobile computing, she has a real strong focus on power efficiency. But right now, she is currently on leave from the Computer Science Department at Princeton, where she is a chaired professor, and she's serving as the head of the CISE Directorate of the National Science Foundation, the US National Science Foundation. In this role, which has the slightly confusing title Assistant Director, she leads investments in all areas of computer and information science and engineering, hence the acronym, including the investment that made CIFellows, this program, possible. So we all have her to thank for this, and also to thank her for being willing to join us today and say a few words. So Margaret, please take it away.
Thanks, Liz. Let me see if I can share my screen quickly. Wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you all joined. My name is Margaret Martinosi, and as Liz mentioned, I'm currently leading the Computer and Information Science and Engineering, or CISE Directorate at NSF, and I'm on leave from Princeton. And I wanted to start with a round of thank yous. So I want to thank the folks at CRA, CCC, and all the PIs who did the work to write the proposal so that NSF could fund it, so that this postdoc program could happen. So if you are one of the 170 or so people hoping for this postdoc to help out your specific career pathways, please thank them. Thank you also to the NSF team that helped make it happen behind the scenes at NSF. Thank you to the community members who are going to put in time as the selection committee, as the reviewers, and ultimately become mentors for these projects as well. And thank you to you, because you're members of the CISE community, and we're really grateful to have you. We have so many research challenges and opportunities to go after, and we need all of you. That's, I think, 90% of what I was asked to do today. I'm just going to flip through a couple more slides briefly. Why is she showing a picture of a tree? So this is a tree that's actually 100 feet behind me in my backyard. And it's an analogy that's become very powerful for me over the past year or two. I really strongly believe that research, there's an analogy to planting trees, which is, this tree has been behind me in my backyard for decades. I don't know who planted it, but whoever planted it ended up with, decades later, me having the benefit of its beauty and its shade. And I think of research that way too. When we work with a student, when we write a paper, when we write a proposal, those are all acts of basically planting a tree so that someone in the future can benefit from the shade, from the impact of that work. And likewise, the fact that we can be together by Zoom today is because of trees that were planted decades ago in high-speed networking and advanced graphics processing. And so part of the reason why I'm showing this slide today is because you, as graduating PhD students looking for postdocs, you are a part of this process too. You are people who have made investments of your own time and energy into your research, and the community has made investments in your support in cultivating your career. And we want to make sure that you grow up and give shade as well. And that's what this postdoc program is about. I actually was relatively new to NSF in March 2020, when the pandemic was first sort of announced as a pandemic, when it was first having its impact. And I can remember being still in the NSF building before we started teleworking, realizing that it was likely to have huge impact on our PhD job markets, because as you know, a lot of our sort of interview season is right now in the spring. We had a hunch it was going to have impact, and we worked quickly, amazingly quickly, and got CIFellows 2020 funded in time to help out 59 of last year's graduating crop. So the goal, the unfortunate part is that we're still in a pandemic. I'm still teleworking. We still have impacts on our job markets. The fortunate part is that we have, again, been able to find resources to fund another year of CIFellows, this time 2021. And we're really grateful for the folks who put so much time and effort into the selection process last year, because I think one of the things it showed was a way to do selections and matching in a way that spread the benefits across a broad section of the community, both topically, demographically, the number of universities impacted. It was really neat to see. And so here we are, CIFellows 2021, at it again. I wanted to end, when we're back to some more normal way of living, this is the NSF building. I hope you will stop by as your career progresses. I hope you might be on review panels for our proposals and so forth. But one of the things that I wanted to sort of end with and emphasize was the degree to which NSF, we're proud of discoveries. Did you know that the muon G2 result from 2 weeks ago that physicists were so proud of was actually hugely supported by computing resources all over the country through a CISE-funded project called Open Science Grid. So we're proud of fostering discoveries, but I also want to stress the degree to which we're proud of cultivating careers. We're proud of fostering discoverers, and that's all of you. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the folks who are going to do the rest of the webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Margaret. And I wanted to echo a bit of what Margaret said about how fast this got done. The NSF team that worked with the PIs on this, made this happen on an incredibly short timeline for the second year in a row during this crazy time when there have been so many impacts on our lives, including the academic hiring market. And next slide, please, Helen. Got it. Back one, please. Sorry, motivation slide. Thank you. This is not the first rodeo for CIFellows. There was a similar pair or triple of programs back during the economic downturn in the late 2000s, when the NSF similarly responded to a real challenge to our research pipeline, and in a very proactive way. Also, this came through CRA. And all of this, the goals here are simple. Like Margaret said, we want to keep good people like all of you in the research pipeline. And that is the goal here. That is the way the program is designed. So next slide, please, Helen. Okay, so the organizations involved, besides the National Science Foundation, which is the foundation of this, which Margaret has told us about, there is the Computing Research Association, which is you can read as well as I can. It's the Research Association for Computing in the United States. It runs with subcommittees. There's one about broadening participation. There's one about education. There's others. The CCC is the subcommittee. It's the subset of the CRA that thinks about research and research visioning. And the CRA and the CCC together, working together, put together this proposal and are running this program. So the next slide, please. This is the set of people that are working hard on this program. I wanted to introduce the co-PIs who are in this call. I saw Ken here. Ken, can you unmute and say something?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. And I'm Ken Calvert from the University of Kentucky. I'm a professor in the area of networking and systems. I was serving at NSF from 2016 through 2019. I got out just before the pandemic hit. And I'm very happy to be able to help with this effort, which I think continues to be very important for our community. So I want to echo thanks for everybody that's gonna help with this, because basically the PIs and the selection committee, it's volunteer work for the most part. So
Thank you, Ken. And Anne is the heart and soul of this. So Anne, maybe you could say a little bit about yourself and your role in this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Schwartz-Drobnis. I'm the director of the CCC. I've been in this role for 8 years, and prior I also worked at the National Science Foundation. And I can echo what everyone else said, but ultimately our goal is for the success of the computing research community. And as recent graduates or soon to be graduates, you're a key part of that. And we want to do what we can to help cultivate your future and your engagement in the community. And we really look forward to working with you and supporting you through this program.
Okay. And we have 2 other PIs who I don't think are on this call, correct? Right. So Randy Bryant from Carnegie Mellon and Ellen Zagura from Georgia Tech are also in this. And there's a bunch of other people here. You can see there's a steering committee that has helped make, steering kinds of decisions for this. And then there's a selection committee, which is kind of like the senior program committee of a conference. For those of you who are very familiar with this, there are program committees and senior program committees and reviewers. This is the senior PC for the CIFellows program. Okay, with that, all of that as introduction, we're now going to get into the nuts and bolts of the program. Again, please put questions in the Q&A as we go along, and we'll get going. So Helen, the next slide, if you would. Okay, and if I mess up, Anne, please, chime in. Your research area must fall under the umbrella of the CISE Directorate, and you can visit the CISE website to see what that umbrella covers. You need to complete your PhD between January 2020 and the end of this year. You must either be a US citizen or permanent resident, or you must have received your PhD from a US or be in the process of receiving your PhD from a US institution. By the notion of notion of completing your PhD is a little bit complicated, and we'll get back to that. Those are requirements for the applicant. The CIFellows program, you apply as an applicant and mentor pair, and you can apply with different mentors. We'll also get back to that. Your mentor, or you as a mentor, you must be employed as at a US academic institution, and you can't be your mentee's current PhD advisor or current postdoc advisor. So this is intended to be a career broadening kind of program, not just a corollary, not just writing the 3 papers that you didn't get around to during your PhD. The fellowship, the CI fellowship, must take place at a US institution. We have quotes around at because we all know that at does not mean what at used to mean. So we'll also get back to that. And again, the last point there, you coordinate with a mentor to apply as a pair. So the next slide, please. Do you want to switch off, Anne, so I'm not talking about everything?
Sure, absolutely. So in terms of how to find a mentor or a CI fellow, the number one thing we encourage everyone to do is use your networks. Use your networks, use your advisors' networks, use other graduate students or recent graduates in your lab, in your university, and so forth. However, sometimes that may not be broad enough, or you really want to try something different. And so we are offering for the community an opportunity board where you as potential fellows, you as potential mentors can post about yourself. It's pretty easy to use, I think. It's pretty easy to search. And I know there are quite a few posts up there. So we are monitoring it, but we are not endorsing anything on this board. We are monitoring it for inappropriate use. Beyond that, it's for you to find a person who you like what they have to say, reach out to them and say, hey, can we work on a proposal together? Because I think my interests match with yours. So please use this opportunity board. We will maintain it throughout this whole process. And we do ask for everyone, if you find someone that you found that match and you're going to work on a proposal together, please simply remove your post so that someone isn't then contacting you and you then having to fend it off, and just trying to keep it cleaner for those using it beyond. As I said, it's very easy to use. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to us as well. Next slide. You want to go for this, Liz?
Well, I wanted Helen to back up for a sec, because there's we will not be using these. We won't be using these posts as part of the selection process at all. So, this is for you folks. It's not for us. Okay, next slide. This one has a lot of small font stuff on it. And so you can all read quite well. There was already a question in the Q&A about whether you can apply twice. You can apply twice, once with mentor A and once with mentor B. They could be similar project proposals, or they could be different. It depends on what works for the different pairs of people. We will use hot CRP, with which some of you may be familiar because it's used in many systems conferences. If you are doing 2 applications, you need to do 2 separate whole applications. I know that's a bit of a pain, but that makes it easier to handle the logistics. A mentor can have at most 1 CI fellow, and a CI fellow can have at most 1 CI fellowship. So that's one limit. Now, in terms of the details, these are all important. This is not the case that the research trumps everything and everything else is secondary. The research proposal is important. It's a 1-page statement of what you want to do during this 2-year fellowship. And you do need to pay attention to the criteria that come in any NSF proposal, which are called intellectual merit and broader impacts. This is something that if you're not familiar with, you need to get familiar with in order to write NSF proposals in the future. The PAPPG is the big long guide about how you write NSF proposals, and you just Google that and you'll get it. And there are suggestions here about what broader impacts might be, but you can also, again, just Google broader impacts and see what people think about this. It could be outreach, it could be teaching, it could be diversity, it could be all sorts of things. You don't need to cram your references into the 1 page. You can have a 2nd page of references for your research proposal. Then there is a plan. Actually, there's 2 more plans. The CI Fellowship Plan is about the career growth that you anticipate receiving or undergoing during the course of this fellowship. So what are you going to learn? What are you going to do? How is your skill set going to broaden? How are you going to deepen your knowledge? How are you going to deepen your connections? And specifically, how are these tied into the advance of your career objectives? Now, importantly, this is not something you write as a potential CI fellow and then throw into your application. This needs to be put together in conjunction with your mentor, and not just as a matter of they read it and they say yes or no. They need to be involved. And that is going to be a component of the review process. Is the mentor actually involved and invested in these CI fellowship plans? And this one piece of this is, how are you going to work together as a mentor-mentee pair to achieve what you have written down? And especially in this time of COVID, when some of this may transpire remotely, you need to think about that and talk about it. Then there's a mentoring plan, which is, okay, so the CI fellowship plan is maybe mostly the work of the fellow, and the mentoring plan is maybe the dual, that it is maybe mostly the work of the mentor, but they're both put together, thinking about each other. And so one is from the fellowship plan, one is how the mentor approaches this. And we have best practices on the webpage for postdoc mentoring that we've developed, the CCC have developed over the years, and those are available for you. And then a CV, that's the obvious last thing, but please don't give us the 20-page version, just 2 pages, please. And that's another skill that you're going to need to learn when you're applying for NSF funding, because there's a specific format for your CV for NSF. So next slide, please. And then Anne, my voice is getting hoarse, so can you, thank you.
Absolutely. So in addition, some of the rest of the application is stuff you'd expect. Letters of recommendation from your current research supervisor. That's most likely your PhD advisor, but we do realize there might be some extenuating circumstances where it will be someone else. But you need that letter of recommendation from someone whom you are working extremely closely with currently. An additional letter of recommendation that is of your choosing whom it is, whom you want to write that. You will need a letter of support from your proposed mentor. In this letter, we do ask that the mentor indicates their lack of funding in support of this. And we also want the mentor to ensure that this letter complements the CI fellowship plan. We want to make sure that you are working on this application. While it's for you to do research over the next 2 years, a mentor is a key piece of it. So we want to make sure it's not just you saying you're doing it and you each do your own components. This really needs to complement the CI fellowship plan. And then finally, the rest of this stuff for your application, this is the standard stuff, your title, your information about yourself, your university, your advisor, your date of graduation, and so forth. You're going to need to put in the authors for your letters of recommendation and topics. It's called topics in the application system. It's what you'd consider your research areas. And those are the areas that the CISE umbrella covers. I'll answer this now because it's been coming up a bit in the questions as I've been monitoring. You do not have to be a computer science PhD to apply for this program. Your research has to be covered under the CISE umbrella. So if your research area is not listed in those topics, which we think is a pretty good covering of the CISE umbrella, you might want to think about it. That's not a definitive no. You can select other and explain it. But that is how we look at the CISE umbrella, and that is what you should consider when looking to see if you are eligible. I know a couple of people asked, I'm a mechanical engineering doing this. I'm not, at this point, we're not going to get into individual eligibility, but it's truly, if you feel you can fit under those research areas, if you could be funded by a program manager in NSF CISE, then yes, this program is for you, because those are the type of people who will be reviewing and looking at these applicants. All of those items listed under 8 right now, we indicate we're going to ask you to fill those out in the application system by May 10th. The actual application will be due by May 17th, but this information will give us a jump start on the reviewing so that we can have everything in place, enabling this to happen so quickly. And also it will generate the information to get your letter writers the information they need so that they will have a week to do their letters. We don't want that to happen last minute as well, because the final deadline, as you'll see in a few slides, will be May 17th for everything. So that's the components of the application. Next slide.
Okay, so yeah, so that business of a 2-stage process of application is similar to what many conferences do. Like, you have to send in your title and your authors and your abstract a week in advance, and then you send in the full paper a week later. So that's kind of what we're mirroring here. We will evaluate the selection committee. The reviewers in the selection committee will evaluate your proposal along many axes, beginning with, but not ending with, your track record. So what you have done so far. Also on the merits of what you're proposing. And you may not have done any of that yet. So that might be a completely separate thing. Maybe you're moving from one part to another of computing research. We will consider, and we will ask the reviewers to consider, the fellowship plan. If it's pro forma and content free, that will probably torpedo your application. And how well the mentor's letter and the mentoring plan and the fellowship plan all knit together is important. Again, if they're disparate, disjoint, disconnected, that's not good. We will pay attention to diversity along all the appropriate axes, including research areas. So demographics, institution type, all sorts of things like that. Preference, again, I said this in the first slide, US citizens and permanent residents. And this is actually not a preference, right, Anne? This is a you must, well, preference. This is you must be either this or a PhD from a US institution. There was a question about this in the chat. There's a max 2 rule. No more than 2 CI fellowships will be awarded to people whose PhDs came from University X for any X. And no more CI fellowships, no more than 2 CI fellowships will be awarded to people who plan to go to University X to study with a mentor for all X. So that means that there's going to be 2 people max from, I don't know, University of Colorado, coming from and going to. And that's a hard constraint, but it's important in order to distribute the benefits of this program across our entire research community and not have it cluster. So next slide, please. Yeah, so Anne showed you the 4th line of this is that kind of pre-registration stuff with some demographic information, title, who are your letter writers. That's May 10th. That's pretty soon. So that means that you got to get on the horn here and got to get on the stick. Today's the webinar, that's the 15th. Our application system based on Hot CRP will go live next week, sometime, hopefully early next week. And then May 17th, your applications need to be done and in, and that includes the letter writers, which is part of why we're asking for, as Anne said, the letter information by May 10th so that we can send them requests and information on how to upload their letters. And we're hoping to have the reviewing process and the selection process done by the end of June and let people know who is going to be a CI fellow next year. Next slide. And then Anne, maybe, oh no, that's 2 copies of that. Next slide. We do have an FAQ. Whenever we get a question, we drop it in there. Let's see, next slide. And go, Anne, please. Yeah. Anne and Maddie is also.
So some of our common questions from the past that I've also seen coming up. May non-US citizens apply? Absolutely. You're part of the research ecosystem here. That's what we're working towards. Because of the funding stream, I have to say that preference will be given in the selection process to US citizens and permanent residents, but all may apply as long as if you're not a US citizen or permanent resident, your PhD must be from a US institution. The other key thing is that your PhD must be completed in the window of January of 2020 through December 2021. Those eligibility requirements are strict. I know a few people have asked, what if I am completing a first postdoc? The eligibility criteria for this year is January 2020 through December 2021 for your PhD completion. So however that fits, that is okay. The one other thing to acknowledge, and this has also come up in the questions, is we, being CRA, CCC, NSF, will not be helping with any visa issues. I know there is some opportunity if you graduate this year to stay on with OPT. You need to work that out based on your degree, your current visa, and your future employment, whether it's extending, if you can get the school to work with you, but we will not be able to help with any of that. That being said, this will not be a consideration in evaluation. We are assuming if you are applying that you will have a way for it to work. Okay, next question. What does it mean to complete? As Liz alluded to earlier, especially in the time of COVID, it does not mean that you've had to graduated, walked across the stage in full regalia with your diploma, because we know some people who might not do that for another year or so. However, you have to, prior to December of 2021, you need to have completed all course requirements, completed all defenses. I'm sorry, I can't speak right now. Completed your defense and maybe have minor revisions to do. If you're planning for your defense December 25th, well, December 20th, and really aren't sure that it's going to happen, then this probably isn't for you to apply. If you're here, you're fairly certain you're planning to defend sometime either now or already have, or in the early to middle fall, and you will be able to complete the requirements. Like I said, you may not have that final signature on your signature page or have walked across the stage, but complete is that you have met all of your requirements and submitting everything. Next question. I don't see my research area listed. Can I still apply? I think I addressed this earlier. The key thing is you need to be able to quantify, and this should come out in your research statement, how your research falls under the CISE umbrella. We're in a society of interdisciplinary, and we welcome that. We want that. That's how we're going to move the needle forward. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to be able to have been funded by a CISE program manager. And if you're unsure what CISE is, it's the Computer and Information Science and Engineering Directorate, but that might be an indication of whether or not you can apply for this as well. So I think that is it for the common questions based on the past. I'm going to now start answering, keep asking more. I'm going to read questions, and Liz, Maddie, Ken, please feel free to answer. And I'll answer a few as well, coming from the administrative side. Are there any funds available for CIFellows to buy technology required for the planned research if their mentors do not have such in their lab department? Yes, there are funds available. If you do get the fellowship, we will explain how that works. Ideally, your university will have some funds as well. We don't have an unlimited pot for anything and everything, but we do have a way to help support you because we want to make sure that you have the resources available to you to do your research. That does also include travel to conferences and so forth. Like I said, it's not unlimited, and hopefully there are other resources as well, but we are going to do what we can. Alrighty. Would I be ineligible to receive the fellowship if I have job offers and given job offers after I have applied or have accepted a job offer that would start a year or two later? That's a tricky one, and well, Liz, do you want to take that or do you want me to take it?
I want you to take it because yeah, please.
Okay. Are you ineligible? No, but in the spirit of the program, where we are really trying to help build the community, and at a time when hopefully everyone recognizes that the community, there's some real possibilities that this could harm the academic research community because the job market is so tight because of the pandemic and what this is doing to academia. We would hope that if you have other opportunities, take them, enjoy them. Leave this opportunity for people who don't have those opportunities. Mm-hmm. So it's not an official eligibility requirement. We're not going to ask you to show whether you show us proof that you don't have other opportunities, but think about what it means on behalf of yourself and the community. We are asking the mentors to indicate that they don't have funding for a postdoc because there are some universities may have funding, and that might be the best opportunity for you as well. So it's just the spirit of this program, as Margaret said earlier, is really a community building program. That's what we're looking at for the future of the computing research ecosystem.
Can I add something there? I think it wouldn't be kosher to apply and not include that information in your application, because remember that these are going to be reviewed by essentially a program committee and people in the community. And I think that is information that probably would be taken into account in making decisions.
And also probably the reviewers, it would be pretty likely that the reviewers one of the reviewers would say, wait a minute, we made him an offer. And so that wouldn't be a very good thing to come out. Yeah, so it would also be inappropriate to have hooked up with someone for a postdoc and they've got the funding and you've got the project and try to use this to fund that instead. That's, again, as Anne said, we're trying to save the research pipeline here, and we're trying to, really make a safety net and support great people. So let's let's try to do that.
Given all of the changes people have had to keep up with from COVID's effect, is it possible to do at least part of the 2-year project remotely from the institution you get awarded from?
We've allowed that in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to talk about it and you have to say how that would move you beyond, again, just finishing those 3 papers that you meant to write during your PhD, which might be, you might feel the gravitational pull more towards doing that if you don't physically move. So you need to think about that and write about it.
Can you apply for this grant mechanism with 2 mentors for 1 project if you are working jointly with both of them?
Go ahead.
I was going to say the answer is yes. The key thing is we only want 1 mentorship plan and 1 mentorship letter. So perhaps having them write that together or indicating it. And you do ultimately have to pick 1 host institution. You can't be hosted at for your CI fellowship postdoc at University of Kentucky and University of Colorado. You have to pick 1 place and go from there. But yeah, part of this program is career enhancing and growing, and working with multiple people is a good thing. Given that the program is designed to be career broadening, will research statements that are substantially different from one's PhD research area be preferred?
They can't be, I mean, I would say yes, but I would worry about the term substantially. I mean, it needs to be a meaningful broadening. So we're not going to look at these applications and say, oh, this one is 2 inches from her PhD, and this one is 3 inches from her PhD, so we'll pick this person. But it does need to be a broadening of your path, not just the next 3 things you do.
Could I add? I would say it's not the intent of this program to sort of warp the normal notion of a postdoc into something different, right? So if it's a postdoc that you might get otherwise, the idea is to replace the funding or to provide funding for this. And postdocs in general are intended to be career broadening and in all dimensions, right? In terms of where you've been, the people you've worked with, your network, and all of that kind of thing. So I would just look at it through that sort of broad, if you will, scope.
As a CI fellow, will I be considered an employee of the host institution? Yes, you will be. It is called the CI fellowship because that's how it's come through. You will work we will be funding the institution to employ you for the 2 years of your program. Until when will you decide whether or not you want to take the offer if selected? We actually will have a very tight turnaround because, as we've explained, this is a community broadening program. And if you're not going to take it, we want to provide the opportunity to someone else. So I don't have exact dates, but this is not the type of thing that you're going to be able to sit on for weeks on end and then so forth. Hopefully, if you're applying for this and you don't have any other opportunities, you get this. In the best case scenario, you're applying for this, you're awarded this, but you've just learned that you've been given a tenure track position at another institution. Turn us down by all means. That's our ultimate goal, is we want to keep people in the research pipeline. Can someone apply if they're also trying to get postdoc funding via another grant that is not submitted yet?
Yes.
Because of the requirement that an institution cannot receive more than 2 fellows, do you recommend we submit 2 applications with 2 separate institutions to increase our chances of success?
Certainly that would widen the field of play.
I'm trying to find. How will,
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to look through it.
Someone asked, can my current PhD advisor be a co-mentor? That would be a little narrowing. I mean, if it's a matter of you want to use your current PhD project as a springboard to do some interdisciplinary work in another field, that I imagine could work, but you would have to make very clear in the research plan, and the mentor would have to make clear in the mentoring plan how this is not just more of the same.
A couple of, I'm going to paraphrase this. When we ran this program a decade ago, we ran it for 3 years. Is the plan to do the same this year? We don't know. If you are eligible now, apply now. When we ran this program a year ago, we didn't know that we'd be running it now. We didn't know we'd be running it now until about a month and a half ago. So we have no idea. It will depend on many factors that are way out of our control, hence the rush timeline, because we want you to have as many opportunities as possible. So we can't guarantee what'll happen next year. We know what we have funding for now, and that's to create another cohort of CIFellows.
So someone is asking about the actual specific time on May 17th when the deadline would be over. I think it's the usual kind of American Samoa time, which is the last time on the globe when it is that day.
Anywhere on Earth.
Yeah.
AOE, yeah.
Someone
There's another.
Go ahead.
What if both proposals with 2 mentors get accepted? Should I give up one of those? That will not happen. There won't be two won't be accepted from the same person.
Is the fellowship stipend the same across all universities or locations in the US? Yes, it is a standard. Could we invite co-mentors from non-academic institutions such as NASA or NOAA? As a co-mentor, yes. Your primary mentor, though, has to be an academic institution. And related, I saw a question earlier about national labs. Unfortunately, those are primarily DOE funded and through a different stream. For this program, you need to be at an academic institution.
And speaking of funding streams, someone asked whether there are other NSF postdoctoral fellowships that you can apply to in case you don't get selected for this one. That I would suggest using your networks to figure out the answer to that. Someone asked, Anne, can mentors be visiting professors at the university?
I think that's a tough one because you need to show that they're going to be there for 2 years. You're going to be there for 2 years. I'm not going to say a hard and fast no, but keep in mind that there are going to be some logistics you're going to have to work through at the university, and having someone who isn't housed there and knows how to get stuff done, whether it's awards processed and so forth, that might be trickier. Also realize that a part of your CI fellowship experience hopefully is working with and mentoring students in labs and so forth. And if it's a visiting professor, they may not have that same lab type setup in the university.
And someone's asking about last year's applications where the research proposal was 2 pages with one as research and one as timeline. I don't remember that, but this year it's just research and intellectual merit and broader impact. So you don't need to put in a timeline.
Sorry, trying to get through. Is there a rough estimate on the number of awards? Last year we awarded 59. There's some trickle down effect and so forth, and we have to see. I'd expect the same amount this year, maybe a little more. But just apply and try to make your chances as helpful as best as you can. Does the fellowship include health insurance provided by the university? You are an employee of the university, including benefits. I can't guarantee per university whether you'll have to pay for that or how it will work out, but you will have the opportunity for all of those through your university.
How will the selected fellow be associated with the mentor's academic institution? Should the mentor take care of that connection? Yes.
As a fellow, I'd love Ken and Liz to answer this. Are you allowed to teach courses at the university?
Yes. In fact, that can be a very important career advancement if you want to be a professor.
And I'd even say that's something you could put in your CI fellowship plan, is that you hope to teach N number of courses and so forth. Can the postdoc be for 1 year instead of 2 because of visa concerns? It is intended to be a 2-year program. If for reasons you have to leave early, we aren't going to stop you. If you get a job midway through, we aren't going to stop you and hold you back, but you are applying for a 2-year program. I'm looking through.
There are a couple questions about kind of second round of offers, Anne. Yeah, go ahead.
So we did have, I can just give you experience from the past. We made offers based on the reviews. Some of them were turned down for a variety of reasons, and we did, as soon as possible, then offer to the next eligible candidate. I will say that there is more that goes into it. It's not simply a wait list. You won't be notified if you're on a wait list because there are a variety of factors that go into play, in particular the institutional conflicts. So do keep that in mind. We will not publish a wait list, but if we do have an opening and an opportunity for you, we will notify you as soon as possible. Is it possible to apply with a mentor outside of CS, but on a project that is in a CS research area? You want to take that, Liz?
I'm sorry, I was reading other questions.
Oh, I'll give that. The answer is yes. Again, as long there are many non-computer scientists who are funded by CISE. Your mentor does not have to be in computer science. Your research has to be in computer science.
I'm a double E. So does it matter whether your research field site is outside the US? Absolutely not. Is it possible to look at a sample proposal from the past years? I think, again, use your networks for that. I'm sure there are other PhD students at your institution who have applied or who were there that applied last year, and that would be a better place to look. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to share any of your proposals with anyone next year either.
Does the application need to be submitted by an authorized organization rep of the organization or directly by the PI mentor? It's directly by the PI, right?
Yep.
And so we will say, I'll give a bit of, yes, it's by you and your mentor that needs to submit it. We will get some pushback from some universities because of the way their sponsored programs office works. We've worked through those issues in the past. The application needs to come from you. It is not a formal NSF proposal where the sponsored programs office has to apply. And if there is pushback once it's awarded, we will work through it.
Is there a preference given to applicants that aim to get a career in academia as opposed to doing industry research? We have broadened our scope this year. Anne, why don't you actually take that?
Sorry, I was reading questions. I missed it.
Okay. Is there preference given to applicants that want to go into academia as opposed to industry?
So we are going to say, it's not necessarily a preference, but honestly, at this point in this job market and everything else, if you want to go into industry, industry's hiring. We're focusing on academia, and this is in contrast to the CIFellows program in the 2008-2009 timeframe when the whole job market crashed. CIFellows were placed in industry then. They're not being placed in industry through this program. So ideally, if you're applying to this, it's because you want to stay in academia, and this is going to help you to do that.
Just while you're reading, let me add, it is expanded a little bit this year to, I think, include job pathways for folks that are not necessarily, that are working in computing, for example, the HPC community, and jobs in that area that wouldn't necessarily be tenure track professor jobs. So technical experts, for example, in HPC is the canonical example I think of.
Someone asked about start times. We in the past, we had a cohort that started in September and a cohort that started in January. And yes, it is the case that, you know, if you're doing a one-year postdoc and you start in January, you're going to have not very long before you're writing your first job applications. So that, you know, we're flexible about either starting in September or starting in January, or, not or.
And the other thing to keep in mind, as I said earlier, especially if you have the January start, we won't penalize you if you have to leave early. So if you have a January start and you're in it for 18 months because of you get an academic job. The other thing to keep in mind is many of the academic jobs, while there's a kind of set interview and offer time schedule, many academic jobs are given, but then don't start for another 6 to 8 months, pending a lot of things. So I would not worry so much about the academic job cycle. I would worry about when does it make sense for you to start this. You know, some people may be graduating this spring, but choose a winter start because they want time off, they want a break, and that's okay. We have some flexibility within that time frame.
And Anne's right. You know, you get an academic job, you get the offer, and then you go back and you tell them, actually, I've got this fabulous postdoc, I want to finish it up. Everybody's going to say yes. So let's see. Would the topics listed under the additional funding opportunities for the CCF community on the NSF website also be eligible? Yes.
Yep, that's
in case of a conflict, can one change the mentor? I assume that this is anticipating the unhappy possibility that you don't get along with your mentor, and we would certainly work with you on that. But that has not come up, thank God, and hopefully it won't. But if it does, we will work with you on a one-on-one basis.
Will there be a negative impact on my application if I pair up with a mentor, not my advisor, from the same institution where I earned my PhD degree?
Depends. I mean, if it's the person in the next office who co-authors everything with your advisor, yes. But if you're at a big institution and it's someone from way far away and you can make the case, no.
Start in September. When will you have needed to submit your PhD by? We have had some people who submitted who said they wanted a September start. They defended their dissertation September 10th. They sent us their information signing off that their committee said, yes, you only have minor revisions, and they started their postdoc the next day. We had other people who wanted to start it later out. So that is up to you what you feel comfortable with. As I said, my concern is if you're planning to submit to do your defense in the end of December, and I know how things can sometimes get pushed, that's when you might want to really think if you'll be able to complete it in time.
And on a meta level, I would urge that everybody take a little time off at least between a PhD and a postdoc. You know, finishing a PhD is a lot of energy, and you're going to be burned out if you go straight into a postdoc. So that's wholly different.
One question that I came up, I think we're getting close and we've tried to get most of them or so forth, but can we have two mentors where one is at a US institution and one is at a foreign institution if the host institution is in the US? Will applications that do this be prioritized lower? We will look at as I said, you have to be employed by a US institution. We will look at it and be expecting that your primary mentor is the one at the US institution. So will it be prioritized any lower? No, but if it reads that 90% of the work is being done with the mentor not at the US institution, then it may be reviewed poorly. So it's think about how you want to handle that. Should I mention in my first proposal that I have a preference on this application over the second proposal, or I should not mention about the second proposal in my first application? No, that's a very good question. Thank you. We do want you to, we want to be aware that you have two proposals in there. And yes, I believe in the system, there's a way to indicate which one is a preference. If not, and we will clarify this in the FAQs, I promise you. In the optional additional information, please indicate your preference is proposal A or B. If I apply and my mentor is also a mentor for another candidate, will that have a negative impact on our applications? A mentor will only be able to get one CI fellow. So if a mentor is applying with person A, I would probably look for another person to apply with.
Depends if they're the perfect mentor, you know. Someone asks, and we should probably wrap up pretty soon, if your mentor has guaranteed funding for you from other grants, you know, that's not the spirit of this program.
Yeah, and I would just add, there are some questions that we didn't answer live. If you didn't get your question answered, go to the FAQ because some of them actually are answered there.
And
there's
following up, oh, go ahead, Liz.
Okay, there's a bunch of questions about the mechanics of the letters of recommendation. When you send us the names on May 10th, we will then ask those people to put their letters in hot CRP. So you just need to put down their names and make sure they're prepared to write you a letter and tell them that it's going to be on a short turnaround time. But you do not need to gather the letters or submit the letters. That will be handled separately. All right. Well, do we have a summary slide? I can't remember.
No, we
Okay,
are. This
then
is it. We will post the recording probably later this evening of the webinar. We will post a text readout of the questions we answered. Any questions you still have that aren't answered in the FAQ or on here, please check the website. If they're not there, email us and we will answer you and post them to the FAQ as well for everyone. The key thing I'm going to say, we will get, ideally, you're not emailing us lots of questions. We're happy to answer them, but I did get, at least a year ago, I got very used to responding, please check the FAQ. So please do that before sending your question so that we can focus on getting everything else in the back end so that the reviews can happen quickly and efficiently and we can get back to you.
And thank you so much for participating in this and for considering applying to this. I think this will be, I know that this will be an exciting group of people. The existing group of CIFellows has taken off like a rocket, not just in terms of their research, but in terms of their cohort building and their connections that we've built for them with senior members of the research community. So this group is going to do just as well, and I hope you're in it. So thank you.
Thank you all.